for today. Excellent, thank you. All right, last up, we've got Emily Chance. Emily is a freelance OSINT consultant. Her work consists largely of helping individuals and small businesses evaluate their security posture through OSINT, often as part of a larger risk analysis process. In her free time, she watches horror movies or musicals with her dog and attempts to find more ways to automate her job. Please join me in welcoming Emily Chance to ShellCon 2017.
Can everyone hear me okay? Is this good? All right, cool. So, like Wedgie said, my name is Emily, and I am talking about OSINT for pen tests. You can find me on Twitter at G_Solaria. If anyone recognizes that because you're an Asimov fan, come talk to me. We should be friends. I am an OSINT consultant, which is kind of weird. It's a little bit of a niche job that I created for myself. But basically what I do is private clients, which is business services talk for rich people, and small to medium businesses that don't necessarily have the resources to do full-on pen tests, but oftentimes they'll want to evaluate the security posture of their business or sometimes of their individual executives because there's been a threat, something like that. Companies will come to me and say, if you were going to go after this person, what could you find? Where would you start? What would somebody be able to find? Sometimes that's, can you figure out where my kids go to school? Can you figure out how I take where I go to work every day? Things like that. So that is what I spend a lot of my time on doing. Today we're going to talk specifically about how you could take OSINT and apply it to a pen test. This is going to mostly go over workflow, and it's not specifically going to go in depth on any tools. While I was writing all of this, I realized that I could do entire talks on some of the tools on their own, and so I'm not going to try and pack that into this talk. Mostly just we're going to cover the workflow and a few tools and ways that you can use them, but that is by no means the end of what you can do with many of the tools that I'll talk about. I'm going to put everything up on GitHub later. There will be links to the tools that I mentioned and also links to some tutorials that I have found really helpful. So what is OSINT? It stands for Open Source Intelligence. It's anything that can be gained from public information sources. Sometimes that's going to include things like paper records, the microfiche machine at a library. All of that could be used during an OSINT investigation, but for our purposes, we're focusing specifically on internet-based OSINT. So how are you going to use it during a pen test? Well, the recon stage, obviously, is where you're going to be doing the most of this. You can use it to find the infrastructure, the technologies that they're using, and also information about the employees, which is definitely not something you should neglect, because we'll see why later. The general workflow. Now, when I start with a target, I'm generally not being given a company. I'm being given a list of people or a few executives and a company. I've got a few different places to start. But if you were just doing an external pen test and they give you the name of a company, you're going to need to figure out what's the best place to start. Some of that is going to be determined by the scope, your time restraints, things like that, but you need to decide, am I going to start on the infrastructure? Am I going to start with the employees? Am I going to start looking through the technologies and applications that they're using? What information are you going to be looking for about that thing? If it's the infrastructure, obviously domains, subdomains, do they have cloud infrastructure? Do they have servers that they have on their location but have some internet-facing servers there? What are you looking for? Figure out what you're looking for. Technologies, obviously it's going to be the applications that they have deployed. If they have any web-based applications that they're using, figuring out what those are as well. And then with the employees, you're going to want to look through personal and online social media, that kind of thing. You're also looking for anything that could give you an indication of their schedule. The org chart obviously is useful because if you end up needing to do some sort of phishing or some more targeted phishing, knowing who reports to who, things like that. And obviously the emails of individuals in the company, because that's probably going to be the first vector you're going to go to if you have to resort to phishing them. So I'm going to harp on this throughout this talk. For OSINT, you need to be repeating your steps often. Every new piece of information that you get, you should run it back through all those same tools, all those same processes. You get a piece of information, you're going to try and say, what information can I get from this information? Every little piece of information can give you more information spidering off of that. And so you want to make sure that every time you find something new, you go back and apply the same process of what pieces of information could I potentially pull out of this one. So we're going to start with infrastructure. This is probably going to be the place that you're going to want to start if you're doing an external pen test, just because that is what you need to know. You can't actually hack anything if you don't know where it is or what it is. So just starting out with a list of domains for that organization. Sometimes they may not even give you that. Sometimes you may just be told, this is the organization you're going after. So you have to figure out the domains on your own. You can use, let's see, yeah, you can use several different tools. This got put a little out of order here. Oops. So you can use several different tools. Some of my favorite tools are Passive Total, obviously, because it's a pretty easy web-based tool that you can go to. It's going to give you a list of all of your subdomains. It's going to give you a list of all the various the trackers that are being used, things like that. So if you've got like Google Analytics or anything like that on there, you're going to want to go there. And then tools like recon has a cert transparency tool that you can use that to turn up even more subdomains. Recon is another tool that I'll talk a little bit more about. So then this slide should have been before the previous one. Apologies. You're going to want to run your list of domains through tools like Passive Total. And also Multigo is another tool that I use a lot. It's really good at visualizing. And so it's going to give you that actual sort of spidering out data visualized in front of you to where you can see, okay, I got this piece of information. I'm going to run, Multigo calls them transforms. I'm going to run a transform on it. I know I can get 4 other pieces of information off of this based on the transforms that are available to me. So things like that. Multigo I love because it allows you to actually grab APIs from some of the other companies, and companies will generate their own transforms for Multigo. And so even within the community edition of Multigo, you can use many of Passive Total's functions because Passive Total has an API, and they've created, they call them seeds, the servers that these transforms are on. They've created their own seed server, so you can take the transforms from their server, run it using the API key that you got for your account, and you don't ever have to cross over those two tools. It's all going to come from Multigo. Let's see. So this is Passive Total. What we're looking at right now is just like a first couple listings for Best Buy. But what I mostly want to point out here is at the top, I don't know if that's as visible as it should be, but if not, it says, basically it's got resolutions, who is, subdomains is going to be one of the first places that you start looking. But it's also got the trackers section. The trackers section is, like I said, going to have your Google Analytics, things like that, any type of analytics that they're using. This is Multigo. As you can see, it's much more complicated. When you first start with it, you're going to be like, what is this? What all do I do with this? What you're going to end up doing with this is each of these little circles is a data point that you can then take and right-click on it and apply a transform. The transforms will pop up for the type of transform that you're allowed to do on that data point. You're going to get more information, once again, spidering out of that. And in Multigo, you can use multiple different entities. So you can have a domain. You could also have an IP address. You can have, as you can see, these are just some of them. You can see the scroll bar goes all the way down here. So there's a lot of things that you can plug in there and just start right-clicking, apply transform, right-click, apply transform, and build that web out as much as you can. So I've mentioned a few times the trackers. Google AdSense, Google Analytics. There are several other analytics and tracking companies that will gather that data for you. Figuring out those trackers and then matching them to other sites that are using that same tracking ID is going to be able to help you figure out, are there other sites that I'm not seeing here, but they're using the same ID, so clearly they're either being managed by the same third party, if they've got a third party that's handling their analytics, or it's not their domain, but it's a site that they own. They have some sort of interest in it, so you should probably include it in your information. You can see down here for Best Buy, they have an investors.bestbuy.com, and it has one analytics tracking, and then the one above it, which is their forums, has a different analytics tracking. So you can sort of start to pick out what things might be grouped together based on, oh, these ones have the same analytics code, this one has a different analytics code. Tools like DNS map are another way that you can go about and start brooding additional subdomains. DNS map can be provided with a word list. So if you provided a word list of, say, common applications that you think they might have subdomains for, that's going to be another way to just start really popping out as much as you can. And one of the things you might notice here is that a lot of these tools kind of do the same thing. Okay, so you're using Multigo and Passive Total and DNS map just to get subdomains. Well, not all of your tools are going to return the same results. Not all of your tools are going to have everything in them. And so making sure you're using multiple tools across the board is going to get you the most results, because you're going to end up finding things in one tool that weren't turned up in another tool. And as long as you're cross-referencing them, you're doing enough to say, okay, I think I've got a pretty clear view here. I'm not relying on just one source of information. So once you've got all of this, you list it all out. You start looking at it and you say, okay, let's look for the actual, where is this hosted? Let's start gathering IP addresses. Let's get everything we can, all the information about what's actually being hosted on these domains. If you can gather any type of, well, that goes later into the technologies, but obviously you're going to start looking at all of this infrastructure and dig deeper into it. Repeat every step, every time, like I said. Run something through Passive Total or through the API using Multigo. Use the other options within Multigo, because you'll have multiple transforms from different companies that may do different things, or the same thing. Run both of those transforms even if they're the same thing, because one company's data set may be different than another. You might find out that you missed something from one company that you get from another. So let's look at the technologies now. Once again, you're going to ask the same questions. What are you looking for, and where's the best place to start? So you're looking, obviously, for applications and services that they may be using that may be hosted internally, or web applications that they may be using as well that you can start to look at. This a little bit where you look is going to be determined by the scope of the pen test. Obviously, we've all seen situations where people say, no, don't touch that. This is too important. Don't look at it. Don't do anything to it. If that goes down, everything ends. Good question there is why? if that goes down and everything ends, why? But obviously we don't get to determine that, so scope of your pen test, what you're allowed to touch, is going to determine sort of where you start to look here. Shodan. We all know Shodan. If you don't know Shodan, spend some time digging through it, because it's great. There are other tools that do the same thing. You should use them as well, but I'm not going to list all of them here because there's just a lot. Shodan's probably one of the best. If you haven't dug into Shodan much, digging into that to start is good. If you're familiar with Shodan, check out the ability to script some of the actual things that you're looking for, because they do have the ability to, you can script out some of what you're doing and looking for with Shodan. Shodan will pull banners. Shodan will also have things like screenshots of RDP logins, and that way you then have a login or username that you have been able to grab without actually ever having to hit the IP yourself or look at it yourself. Obviously, other open source tools here that you're going to use are things like Nmap. I'm not going to go over Nmap because I assume most people in here have used it fairly frequently. There's a lot to it. But if you haven't used Nmap, definitely dig into that. And then Multigo and recon NG are going to have stuff for the technology side of things as well. They're going to have transforms, and they're going to have, with recon NG, their modules that are going to allow you to start digging into that as well. Look for a company GitHub. Look for employee GitHubs. You're going to find things like configuration files. I see Jason back there smiling. We were just having this conversation the other day about looking through commit messages, and you can type in secret key. The number of pages that pop up with results for secret key has to have an ellipses to get to the end number. That's too many. So those are out there. Finding things like that can help give you some clues about, different things that they might use. I, like Wedgie mentioned, really like to try and automate as much of this as I can. So I have been also teaching myself Python for the purpose of automating a lot of this. The Google Custom Search Engine API is really, really great. And little pro tip with that, it costs money, but you get $300 every time you sign up for Google Billing. And the requests are, I think, $5 for 10,000. So just a new email every time you need to do it again, and you'll never have to pay for API pulls from the Google Custom Search API. You can script that out to start looking through things like Pastebin or sites like that. One of the programs or one of the scripts that I wrote just takes a list of domains and a list of keywords, runs them all, returns me results prioritized based on a prioritization that I've sort of set for myself. And it's nice because I don't have to go to the actual Google Custom Search Engine, web-based thing every time and say, I want to look at this keyword. Now I want to look at this keyword. Now I want to look at this keyword. So scripting out things like that, finding little ways that you can make your job easier and have that information just all be thrown at you. And then also continually monitoring that, because you never know. Somebody might throw something on GitHub and then realize 24 hours later, I should delete that. But if you've been doing your job and you've been monitoring, you're going to pick that up anyway, even if it gets deleted. Again, every time you get a new piece of information, try to run your process on it again and see if you can turn it into even more. Try to continue that spider web out. So, employees. This is going to be the bulk of this. People sort of say, well, why target employees? People are incompetent. Individual persons can be very good at their job, but when you put a lot of them together, they're not going to continue doing that job well across the entire organization. It's just never going to happen. They may leak information. If you need to resort to social engineering later, having done this step to begin with is going to prevent you from having to pause your pen test to go back and say, well, let's look through the employees here. Let's try and find some information we can use to phish or social engineer them or anything like that. No, you've already got that. And as you've been going through your people searches and through your personal social media, we've all heard stories about, oh yeah, so-and-so took a picture of their desk and they happen to have the login for Salesforce on a sticky note on their monitor. Well, now that's on Facebook, and because you were looking through their Facebook, you have just now gotten a login to one of their applications. Also, it will make you laugh, because people being incompetent is funny sometimes. It just is. An example of this that I wanted to use more of was when I originally started doing this. I was going to try and do some OSINT on our own Kieho, one of our DC562 members, and he's got really good OPSEC. Like, it kind of scares me a little bit. I almost think that Kieho has like some second life that he's hiding from all of us, because his OPSEC is really good. I was shocked. And probably that's why he let me do it in the first place, because he knew I wouldn't find much. But I did find this, which when I asked him what was up with that, he said, hey, that banner's cool. Cool. So if you feel like having a conversation with Kieho about his graphic design skills, he clearly has a second career.
I was 15 years old.
So, once again, the laughs. You will find laughs. So, employees. who are your target employees? Obviously, you're going to look for people who have their hands on IT. If they have InfoSec, you're going to look for who's in the InfoSec department. But you also want to look for non-technical employees like HR, sales, administrative assistants, things like that, because those are the people who are probably not going to have the greatest OPSEC. Kieho is a sysadmin. He has great OPSEC. The person who works at Kieho's work and just sits at the front desk all day may not. So that might be the person that I want to get information from, as opposed to somebody who's saying, oh, I know what's out there, I know what somebody could do, I'm going to hide all of this. The girl who just answers the phone might not know that she needs to do that. So what information do you have about these employees? If you're just being given an organization name, there's a very good chance that you don't have any information, including who these employees are, which is the best place to start if you don't have those. If you do have a list of names, just start searching those names. But you will find that most of the time you're not going to have a list of those names. So start with the list of employees. Do they have general staff pages? Have any of their employees done things like give talks or do interviews, anything of that nature? Anything to just get a foothold into who are the employees of this organization. Do they highlight employees on social media at all? Do they have an employee of the month? Anything of that nature. From there, you can start actually digging into some more specific things. LinkedIn is obviously a huge place to go to get employee information, but there's also tools like LinkedIn that will allow you to extend beyond that, what you're getting. LinkedIn will actually pull email addresses and get you email addresses for some of the individuals. And this is a great way to just start building up that list of employee name, email address, because that's really what you want to have as a starting point for your employee searches. Also, look through Facebook. Facebook does allow people to put their employers on Facebook. People will sometimes skip this because they think, oh, Facebook, LinkedIn will do it all. LinkedIn has ways of hiding some of these things. Facebook does not. So with LinkedIn, it's going to be, potentially you'll have a list of people that work for that company, and half of them will be a profile picture and LinkedIn user. Whereas with Facebook, you're going to be able to start pulling up things like who works for this company really easy using some of the search URLs that they don't necessarily tell you are there, but they are. So going over LinkedIn, if you run into a situation where you are trying to pull information from LinkedIn and you're running into employee profile photo and then just LinkedIn member, there's a few manual workarounds for that. Obviously, doing an exact Google search using just the random Google operators that they give you, site:linkedin.com, and then taking that user's title, because the title will be listed there. You're going to pull up a page, and if it's the same profile picture, well, there you go. You've just matched them, unmasked all that information, and you've got the employee's name. The same thing you can do with looking through the people also viewed section. Just dig through there a little bit. You're going to find that some of the people on that list are connected with the person that you're looking for. So the more you dig through, the more you're going to start having a chance. That's the profile picture I'm looking for. Okay, that's their profile. Now you've got the information. And then also, obviously, reverse image searching the profile picture is another way that you can just quick look for somebody there. And then, obviously, like I said, LinkedIn, you've got email addresses that you can pull from that as well. So start with, once you've got a list of names, start looking over your real name searches. This can lead you to other employees. This can lead you to even better targets. As with the people info tech decision, rank by who's most valuable, but also make sure that as you're looking through who's most valuable, you're not just assuming, well, the people in the IT department are going to be our most valuable people. They may not be. It may be the HR manager who posts pictures on Facebook all day. So some things you want to determine. You want to get, obviously, a work email address. You want to get any types of social media accounts. You want to get personal email addresses as well, and any account usernames that they may use across various accounts. Most people use the same username across multiple accounts. I think most of us even probably do that in some cases. But if you get those usernames, you're going to have an easier time finding further accounts that they may have in other places. So just starting out the searches, there's a number of tools for free and paid people searches. That's Them and People are two that I rely on a lot, but I don't use those exclusively. I have a whole list of sites that I just open all of them and pop it all into every single one. Working on automating that, but I haven't gotten there just yet. The goal here is that each of these databases is going to pull up different information, and it's going to pull up different information given different pieces of information on the same person. Example of this is that I was looking at people to find an individual, found a full name, was able to get a phone number from Spokio, which is a paid service that is worth it for me to pay for if you're doing OSINT for pen tests as a part of a company. Get them to pony up for something like this, because in general, Spokio and paid databases like that are going to have a little bit more information that you can then feed back into the free searches. So I find a phone number on Spokio, I feed it back into People, and it pulls up the same user's profile or the same person's profile on People, but now it has way more info. And it didn't have the phone number there originally. So something about the phone number ended up correlating more information on that person than when I just used their name. And that's why I'm saying every piece of information you get, feed it back into whatever tool you have that will allow you to search for that, because you may find more information. In this case, it was a couple usernames that they were using that I was then able to run through a couple of checks that I used to try and find extra accounts. So employee usernames are going to be valuable even if they're not for work-related accounts. Sometimes you may find that these are usernames that they're using across multiple different platforms. They may have Instagram, they may have Facebook, they may have all these things. Those are places you can look for. Have they been taking photos of their desk with the login for something on their monitor? Or even just knowing, well, I'm looking at this environment and they're using Macs. I can see a bunch of Macs in this office. That in and of itself is going to be just one tiny piece of information that's useful. You can find discussions between employees that may give you information about schedule, about when they start work, when they leave, who their supervisors are, information about the structure of the organization that will help you if you have to go on to actually interfacing with those employees directly, either with a social engineer or using some sort of phishing technique. Employees sometimes will ask work-related questions on support forums. This is something that I have found multiple times, where I have found a personal username for somebody, and that person has used their personal Stack Exchange account to ask a question about something that they're fixing for work. And in those Stack Exchange questions will be configuration files or pieces of configuration files that will give me IP addresses, that will give me the login, or even sometimes keys for things. Less so keys on Stack Exchange. People generally are a little bit better about that, but things like GitHub, those are going to be the types of usernames where you're going to find employees using their personal accounts to do something that they probably shouldn't be doing, putting work-related material on their personal accounts, but it happens, and making sure that you look at that is going to be good. Continuously monitoring these for the duration of your pen test is really useful, because like I said, sometimes people may be like, I'm going to throw this up here really quick and then delete it. If you are monitoring that regularly and just saying, all right, I want to know as soon as somebody posts with this username on this website, you're going to catch those. You're going to catch the things that they think, oh, I'm going to delete it fast enough that no one will know. Once again, this is another thing with the Google Custom Search Engine that I've used to really make sure that I'm gathering as much information, missing anything because people decided, hey, I put this here and then take it down. GitHub accounts, obviously, same thing. looking through the commits, looking through commit messages, as we've discussed, searching commit messages, looking just in general, using a search engine, but trying to search within the domains for GitHub, any of those repository websites like that is going to be really good for you to find the things that you're looking for that they might not have realized they left out there. I use a tool called Namecheck. There's a few others, but Namecheck is probably one of the best ones for finding additional accounts. So if you're running up and you can't turn up any additional accounts, there are tools like that. But also just don't neglect throwing the username in a search engine and trying to see what you can get as you gradually narrow down sort of how much you're specifying within that Google dork. So start out with just the username, then the username in quotation marks, then continue adding on additional operators and keywords or whatever to try and narrow down to the usernames and the accounts that are relevant to you. Emails. Obviously, if we're phishing somebody, we need their email. So these are going to be the most important thing for you to get out of this. However, do not neglect personal emails in all of this. I have been on incident response incidents where the way that the organization was compromised was somebody checked their personal email on a work computer, and they were phished through the personal email. So if somebody has their personal email account, you might be able to use that as a backup if for some reason trying to phish their actual work account gets caught in a filter or anything like that. Their personal email is most likely not running through that, and so once again, people, when you put them in a large organization, may be incompetent and do things like let you phish them through their personal email accounts. There are a lot of tools that exist that will allow you to check email accounts. I like to make my own because in general I don't like using third-party tools. And somebody actually called me out for this the other day. I was saying a lot of third-party tools, I would look through the logs if I was running that tool because that's the kind of person I am. And I assume that most people probably would do the same because if they're running tools like this, hey, why not look for the logs? There are sites like inteltechniques.com is one that somebody mentioned and said, hey, that actually is client side. I still don't like relying on that because you never know when one specific tool like that is going to go away. So having your own ability to make your own checks, having multiple tools for that is going to make sure that you never find yourself in a situation where 1 month the guy that runs this one tool decided not to pay his hosting bill anymore and your tool's gone. So, social media. Employees may post photos of the work environment. They may post photos or information complaining about various technologies that they use. Oh my God, I hate Kronos, it always stops working. Or, oh my God, this is so horrible. That's going to be an easy piece of information for you because then you don't have to figure out that they're using Kronos. Someone has just told you that they're using this specific technology. Also, if you end up having to do some sort of social engineering, having information about that employee, who their manager is, who at their company they may be friendly with, because you see these two women go tag each other at lunch every third, Thursday of the month. Well, now you have a potential for an email that you can spoof from person A to person B about lunch. And that's going to look more legit. And you haven't had to stop your pen test or pause your pen test to go try and find that information. In general, people talk too much on social media, so just don't neglect it because there will be things there that are useful to you. And most social media sites also have a better search method available than just the search toolbar that will allow you to start refining your searches down even more. Twitter has one, Facebook has one, they all have something. Facebook's are URLs. I'm going to go over the exact URLs for all of them, but basically what it is you just take the profile ID, stick it in there, and start adding on at the end of the URL what it is that you want. So for employees, there is a way specifically, it's slightly different than if you're looking for an individual person because you structure the URL slightly different to put in a company page ID, but it will show you all the people who list themselves as employees of that company. These are the actual URLs for individuals, and you can do multiple things. You can do the individual themselves. So if you want to look at just posts or anything made by the individual, you can do things made by their friends, and you can cross-reference them, which is really good when we go back to, like I said, you've got person A, person B, they're friends on Facebook, they work at the same company. Let's look at the pages that they've liked in common. Let's look at the musicians that they have in common, the events that they've been to in common. All of these are things that if you end up having to resort to social engineering, having that information and knowing that these two people like the same thing, it's going to be useful for you. So these are the URLs, and these are the available search options. So what you would do is you would just append any of this to the end of the URL. And these slides, like I said, I'll put these online so that you guys can have all of these and see people taking photos and whatnot, but it will be online, so if you need it, it will be available. You can see things like places visited, pages liked, photos commented. All of these are various things that you could use to start gathering information about the people that work at your target. Specifically, I pulled up a few examples of Mark Zuckerberg's profile. He is user ID 4, so you would just go back and fill in profile ID 4 here, and then add one of these that you want to start looking at. Let's say we want to look at the post that Zuckerberg has recently made. Not sure why you would want to, but you could. He has made a few posts about Oculus Connect, things like that. You can also pull up all the places that he's recently checked in or recently visited. I was recently in Moscow, spending all of his rubles. And that's one of the ways that you're going to be able to get stuff from Facebook. Like I said, there's multiple different URLs for different, like Twitter has them. Digging in and figuring that out, I'm not going to go through all of that just because I don't have time in the scope of this talk, but digging through and figuring out the best ways to search these sites is going to be really useful for you, because you're not just going to be sitting there in front of the search bar at the mercy of what they think you mean. You'll be able to refine it more to, this is what I really want. So let's talk about organizing our OSINT now that we've done it all. This is a process that you kind of need to do throughout the whole thing. Make sure you organize your findings. You don't want to be in a situation where you have this huge file with just a bunch of crap in it and you miss something during the pen test because you didn't look at all of the things that you've got available to you, all the information that you've got available to you. Maltego has some built-in tools for this, for actually making case files that you can then go back and look at. But even just having your own directory system that you say, I have a file here for the entire case, all of my screenshots for technology go here, all of my infrastructure screenshots go here, all of my individual screenshots go here, and then look through all of those. Don't just let it become a jumbled mess because you'll miss something. Make sure that you screenshot everything the first time, because things change. I cannot tell you how many times I have found something, called a client and said, I just found this. And then they're like, oh, well, send it over to me. And I go back and it's not there anymore for some reason or another. Obviously, that's not quite a 1, 2, 3 process. It's not 30 minutes later, it's not there anymore. But if something like that happens and you start thinking, oh, I saw something where they were talking about this thing that I need to know more about right now, you go back and look for it and it's not there, well, then you've just left out some information that could have been usable to you. So these are some of the tools that I've talked about that you should definitely know and take a look at. Recon NG is very similar to Metasploit. It uses modules. It allows you to add in API keys so you can extend the functionality to grabbing things from third parties that you're going to want to use. And also you can write your own modules. Modules can be written in Python, so if you want to start working on adding your own stuff into there, things that the tool doesn't already do, you can do that as well. Same with Maltego. Maltego is great because the visualization of it, once again, is going to give you a really good opportunity to look over things from a visual perspective, for me that really helps. It uses transforms that run on seeds. The seeds are servers that other individuals or companies are maintaining, and they're maintaining the transforms on there. The company that makes Maltego, Paterva, also has obviously their own seed servers as well. And it allows you to make use of, once again, third-party API keys so that you can start using other tools right within Maltego. You don't have to spread out as much work. And then DNS map, obviously, is another one that was mentioned. So OSINT can be noisy. People don't often think about it that way because it's just the recon, right? Well, it can be. So test all of your things first. Test your tools, test your methods, test the various things that you're doing. It's probably not a bad idea to try and set up something to run your own OSINT processes against and see, do I get notifications if I'm running this scan? Do I get an email if I try this specific method for getting a password? Or for getting an email account. An example of this is that there's a social media platform that had a password reset function where you could put in someone's email address and it would pull up their account and whatever recovery options they had on their account, be that a phone number, be that an email address. Now these options were redacted. At one point in time, they changed this, and if you put the correct email address or the correct phone number in, it would just fire off the password reset anyways. Well, I didn't test, and I fired off a password reset to a target. So that's the point where you're just like, shoot, what do I do? What do I do? You test before so that you don't do that again. And every couple months, go through, look at the different services you're using, look at the social media accounts that you're testing these things against, or social media services that you're testing these things against, and see, have they changed this? If I actually put this email address in here, is it gonna fire off a password reset instead of giving me the information that I thought I was gonna get back from it? And then also, once again, set up something to try and check whether any of the things that you are doing are leaving logs that your target could check for. Because who knows, maybe they actually are not completely incompetent and are looking for these types of things. That would surprise me, but you never want to leave yourself open to getting caught that early on in the stage. So, any questions?
During an assessment, if you find a piece of information that is critical to the company and is out of scope, you report it right away, or if it helps you in your assessment, do you report it right away, or do you keep it for yourself?
Well, so for me personally, that's a very different question than it would be if you're doing it on a pen test. If it's out of scope, I would say obviously immediately right away. If it's like, oh, I just found this critical problem with that is not for me to touch, obviously right away go ahead with that and give it to them. For me personally, because most of what I'm doing tends to be focused on individuals and individuals' vulnerabilities, not technical vulnerabilities, but their own sort of physical safety, yes, I report those immediately, because when I find things like that, it's, oh, I just found a paste bin with all of your social security numbers for you, your children, where your children go to school. These are things that they're not going to want to wait for my report. If it were for pen tests, I would be a little more judicious about, is this within scope to help me? Anyone else?
You said you do private contracting. Do you have a name of your business or cards or anything?
Yes. I don't have my personal business card, or my business cards on me, but it's called Urania Group is our company, or my company now. So if anybody wants to hire me, feel free.
What's the domain?
Just uraniagroup.com.
How do you spell that?
You're really going to make me spell it from the day. Oh, it's Narwhal, of course. Yes?
Do you ever write assessments on yourself or your family members?
Yes. Very regularly. So I don't try to hide all that much. Just because it's not necessary for me, really. I keep the things that I do need to hide, very, very segmented from everything else. But yes, I do look regularly just because you never know. I might leak information at some point, and I can also be incompetent. So it's good to do that on yourself. And family members I do because they're not as technically inclined. And it's just, you know, I like to say, hey, did you know that I can find this on you online? Yep, yeah. Yep.
How often do grandmas on Facebook help you out by leaking information about their family members?
All the time. There was one, do I have time to share a small anecdote? There was one situation, and it was actually not quite typical for me, but it was a very wealthy woman who was concerned about her daughter because her daughter had started dating a guy on the other side of the country, was not returning phone calls, had shut off all her social media, several red flags for the type of isolation that you would see at the beginning of an abusive relationship. So she started wondering what's going on, can we find anything on the boyfriend, can we whatever. It took me 5 minutes before I found his ex-girlfriend's grandma's Facebook page, where she asked that we please pray for her granddaughter who has HPV. So now we know that during the period of time when the ex was with this boy that, you know, my client's daughter is now dating, his girlfriend was diagnosed with HPV. So that's obviously a sad story for the boy, a sad story for the girl, everybody involved. I was like, this is bad, this is very unfortunate, but I have a great report now. Because, you know, your clients do sort of ask you to tailor. We want something that's going to help her come talk to us, or at least, you know, get us in the front door to say he's lying to you about this. That's the kind of thing that I can go back and say, well, he might be lying to her about this. So yes, the clueless family members are great.
What's the OSINT human equivalent for someone taking a picture of their new house keys? Like, what's the super common stupid thing that people like to do?
I find people's passwords posted on sticky notes a lot. It is strange how many people keep their passwords written on sticky notes on not because I've found photos of like the refrigerator, and the refrigerator has like the password for the router and the code to call the children's school and give permission for someone else to pick the kids up, and you're just like, could I do that, right? Like, is that out of scope? Can I hire someone to go pick the kids up? Like, no, I can't, but I want to.
I have a pretty funny story. I like to look up people on Facebook a lot. It's just fun. But I found this troll on like this political post, and he was being a jerk. And I actually like clicked on his profile, and he had his like military people on his Facebook profile picture and had his social security number on it.
Oh wow.
If you want the jerk, I'd probably tell you, but I just don't care.
I do that occasionally. I try not to use the skills for evil, but I used to play EVE Online, and my alliance leader was an asshole, and so I doxed him. Also using military history, because he liked to be like, oh, I'm a military commander, so therefore I know spaceships in space. But which he didn't really. But it was the same thing. He had like a whole bunch of his military stuff listed out, and like his all of his pictures on Facebook had his like, you know, the name and everything on there, and it was like, you're done. Yeah. Pictures, comments, stuff like that, yeah. Yeah. Well, I was asked to finish up a little early if I could, so I'll give you an extra 10 minutes here.
Thank you very much. Okay. Are we okay now? Okay. For the last time, comment cards or speaker survey cards. They're at the back of the room. If you haven't already, please fill these out for all the talks you've seen today. It'll really help us out next year when we're selecting the presentations you're going to see. Thank you.